with our next topic. So thanks for all the Message Center updates. First off, I want to say a huge thank you to RBA. I know Eric's on the line. We'll get him up here talking about their services and talking about what's important for them and what they want to share to our community. And we also will be giving away on behalf of RBA 2 Amazon gift cards, $25 each for filling out the survey. You do need to be present to win. However, really what it is feedback about how today went, what you want to learn more about, what we can do for you in the future, and then how our speaker was rated. So we love to do that. We love to give that feedback back to them to know, did they deliver on what was the expectation, and how did they rate? And so that's super important. We always need feedback in order to learn and grow. And so please fill out your surveys at the end. And again, you do need to be present to win. Just another plug, Book of News right there. So you can go out there, aka.ms/what's new Copilot-Ignite 2025. And then of course we have our panel. I'm really super excited. I haven't talked to many of you in some months or have seen you in a while. So thank you, panel, for being here. I'm going to turn it over to RBA and then we'll move right into the panel segment. Eric, are you on?
I am. Yeah. Thanks so much, Michelle. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah, I can hear you great.
Great. Awesome. Cool.
Oh, you went right on mute.
Am I back yet?
That's okay.
That? Yeah. Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay. Is it all right if I share out a few slides?
Yeah, please go ahead.
All right. Great. Thanks. I will kick this off. Well, exciting. No shortage of announcements, that's for sure, from Donna and all those different things. So yeah, just a quick introduction here. I'll keep this pretty short. All right, so I'm with RBA Consulting. I've been with RBA for about 12 years, but I've been in this community of SharePoint and kind of related technologies going back to the early 2000s with things like Minnesota SharePoint User Group and whatnot. So yeah, really excited about what you guys are covering here today. So I lead strategy and business development at RBA. Recently attended Ignite, so I definitely can agree with the comments about just so much information. Tools like the Book of News are really helpful just to better understand, and certainly access to a lot of the downloads that are available through the Ignite website. But yeah, so much good information. Very excited about the direction Microsoft is taking, both with just as it relates to AI related in terms of all the new capabilities, but then also some of the big themes around observability and the governance that they are making available with a lot of those new capability and feature announcements. So just a quick background on RBA. We engage primarily with a lot of small, mid-sized enterprise customers across the Midwest and really around the country. I would say kind of in two main ways. The first is around innovation, where we're helping with whether that's new product development or just large-scale project delivery. And I would say in the last 12 to 18 months, obviously a lot of support regarding emerging technologies related to AI and process automation and those types of things. So that's really an exciting realm in this time of our evolution with AI. And then on the other side of that is really helping organizations from a scale standpoint. So a lot of our customers are looking for help in terms of filling gaps in their team or helping to meet a deadline. And so we will help with bringing in experts from our team to help in a staffing standpoint. We also offer something called collaborative delivery, where we work side by side with our customers' team members and really try to bring some contemporary methods and process as well as specific skills needed. And then we do provide ongoing managed support for a number of our customers for solutions that we've worked on together as well. Really, our whole piece is trying to be that partner that's designed to deliver for not only what's next, but also what's now as well. For today's presentation, I just thought I'd highlight a couple of areas that I thought might be relevant for this audience in the work that we've been doing. So as you look at these topics, probably these are things that either may have been covered or certainly impacting maybe you in your organizations today, but really span, quite frankly, a lot of the technologies that are top of mind. So everything from building out agentic AI solutions, I think we're seeing, and certainly from Ignite, a lot of exciting things around kind of getting to that next phase of going beyond chat and really getting into more of that automation with agents as well. Backdrop of that with Power Platform solutions, with Power Automate, Power Apps, et cetera, helping our clients build out a lot of low-code solutions and getting a lot of value from that standpoint. Process automation, which I touched on with Power Automate and related technologies, and then also just this backdrop of governance and security across all those different types of solutions. And then another area that we've been helping is just regarding AI strategy and readiness. We've got a lot of organizations that we've worked with that have been kind of a little bit Wild West. I think for this audience, you know, if you remember the beginning of SharePoint in those days with WSS and all the things that happened with sprawl, certainly with AI, we're getting some questions regarding how best address those kind of needs as well. And something we take a lot of pride in is we've, you know, through our work with SharePoint and all these related technologies, we've been able to impact, you know, over 1 million jobs in improving those within the broader digital workplace across our clients. As a quick call out to, if you know, as mentioned earlier with Michelle and Don, there's a lot of great resources. If you're ever interested in just, you know, kind of diving deeper into a topic, one of the things that we offer at RBA free of charge is just what we call a briefing, where it's the whole idea is kind of like, how do you go from curiosity to clarity in a short amount of time, where you bring a topic and a time that works for you, we bring a team of experts and we try to answer the questions that you have in a very collaborative way. And I think right now is a good time for that, just because there are so many recent announcements with all the things that came out of Ignite, and a lot of people have questions about how it fits into their existing infrastructure and how to capitalize on those areas. So yeah, with that, I will wrap it up. I just want to say thank you for the opportunity to share a little bit about RBA.
Awesome, great. Well, I really appreciate you sponsoring us. The community really appreciates it. That's how we are able to keep on delivering in our in-person sessions and these sessions, and give out all the different swag we try to give out. So thank you so much, Eric.
Yeah, no problem. Thanks, Michelle.
Yep, you bet. All right, everyone. I think we can go ahead and move into our panel segment. I'm super excited to announce for you. I'm just going to share my screen one more time so everybody can see who these regional directors are. We have Christian Buckley, Suzanne George, Stephanie Donahue, and of course, Joel Oleson. Welcome, everyone. Feel free to come on camera and we'll spotlight you. And then Donald is going to go ahead and move into hosting and trying to give you questions and really connect and create this dialogue for everyone here.
Yeah, so please come off mute, panel, and I will spotlight you guys so we're all together.
Hello.
Hey.
Hey,
Great,
everybody.
great to see you, Christian.
I know my voice was like going out all morning, and it's starting to come back, so maybe we'll luck out.
Good.
That's great.
And weren't you, Christian, you were in Dublin, weren't you?
I was in Dublin for ESPC 25 all last week. Yeah, got home. I literally slept the entire weekend, and so it's you know how that is, where I woke up Saturday at 6 p.m., was up till 4 a.m. Sunday. So yeah, it'll take a couple more days for me to adjust back. Yeah.
Awesome. Well, it'll be great to hear if there are any features or anything else that was announced there that were different from Ignite that we can
I can share something very specific. So I do the post keynote interview with Jeff Teeper every year, and so I had some special questions, and I can share some of that.
That we'll make sure we hit that. So thank you, Christian.
Yeah,
absolutely. All right, looks like we have everybody, but I think Suzanne may be indisposed right now, so we'll see if she pops in. So thank you, everybody, for joining us today. I appreciate it. So the first thing I want to do is let's get to know you guys just a touch. So just tell us a little bit about you got your name, what is your day job, and something interesting about you. Why don't you, Stephanie, why don't you start us out?
You're going to put me on the spot with something interesting, yes. I guess. Yeah. So I'm Stephanie Donahue. I'm the U.S. I always hesitate here. Formerly the U.S. Modern Workplace Practice Lead at Avanade. We are now transitioning to using the term AI Workforce. So I am now the U.S. AI Workforce Practice Lead. I'm sure you're all somewhat in the loop on that transition. If not, we'll talk about it today. But I'm based in Cincinnati, Ohio, Microsoft Regional Director and MVP both. Excited to be here. Gosh, what's something about me? I'm an outdoor person, so I'm certified to scuba dive and love being outdoors. Big boater, Mid Lake Erie every summer. So that's something about me.
Absolutely.
Thanks for having me.
Great. Thanks, Stephanie. Hey, Joel, why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself?
Hey, everybody. Joel Oleson here. I've been working in this space since ancient times. 10 years at Microsoft. I currently work at PlayStation, Sony Interactive. And I think and I'm an RD as well. I think the interesting thing is probably that I finished traveling to all the countries in the world. So it was actually this space that got me traveling and speaking at conferences, spoken in nearly 100 countries, but visited every country in the world.
Yeah, Joel, can you repeat that one more time? I know that you've said it twice, and I'm just like, what? Like, who can do that? That is amazing.
Yeah, so there's actually been more people to space than have been to every country. So it is a fairly unique kind of thing. Yeah, there's only like 400 people in the world.
I say, Joel, maybe that's your next step. Go to space.
And that's, yeah. If I had the funds, I would be there.
Yeah. Right now, I think that's the case. Absolutely. All right. Thanks, Joel. Christian.
Yeah, Christian Buckley. So SharePoint MVP, RD. Joel and I shared an office briefly at Microsoft. I was trying to remember. It was like before you moved over to the product team. It was like 3 months, 4 months overlap. I can't remember.
Right.
Anyway, let's see. I work for Smart Consulting. I also do some independent advisory services, but the day job is with Smarter. And something interesting, a couple things. So one, for those in Minnesota that know me up there, my daughter that's up there, we found out we've got grandkid number 4 coming to Minnesota next year, as well as so that's number 7. Number 6 is coming in April. Number 7 comes in August. So busy in the Buckley clan. So.
Congrats.
But then something interesting. I can't compare with Joel's travels, but I did when I was 18 years old. I read Jack Kerouac on the road. If anybody's ever read that, and I've traveled to some of the historic locations. I hitchhiked for a month from Salt Lake City down to L.A. up to the Bay Area and back out to Salt Lake City. And had an adventure, and I would say I don't recommend it for people to do that. Probably not as scary as some of the places, Joel, you went security-wise, but probably close with some sketchy areas.
Yeah,
so.
yeah. I can imagine. Makes yourself pretty vulnerable. That's amazing.
Oakland at night, not a great place to be hitchhiking. So just for an example. So.
Perfect. Thank you, everybody, for giving us a little bit of background. So one thing, just so everybody knows, is that we do have this, and you guys, I think you all mentioned it, RD, or Regional Director. And I don't know, Christian, can you tell us a little bit about what your job is as a Regional Director in the MVP space? Because there is a lot of MVPs, and I think a lot of us have interacted at different sessions, but regional director is a little bit different. So, what kind of things do you do as a regional director?
Yeah, and I think there's a mistake when people think that it's like, well, an RD is like it's just the next level up of MVP. It's completely different things. They haven't been related in years past, and I think some of the Microsoft internal, the management of RDs is kind of merging over with MVPs. But regional director, and it's a terrible name for that. I think when they describe like the naming, and I don't know, Joel or Stephanie, if you have a better story, what I heard was that they thought, so like, well, these are independent advisors, so not Microsoft employees, which is mistake number 1 that's made. So Microsoft regional director, we're not employees, we're unpaid advisors, And so there are currently 200 some odd. I don't even know the number. It's like around 200 around the world that are senior people that are experts in multiple technology areas, business areas, and we do different things for Microsoft. There are many that are engaged with very closely with product teams and providing advice that write white papers. Like I co-authored a white paper, which was an internal Microsoft only, feeding them feedback. I was very excited for 2.5, 3 years, participated in the creation of the mentor program for the Microsoft for Startups and the Founders Hub, which is now all out there and live. And so it helped kind of fill that out, build that process, help Microsoft in building that program and advising and mentoring startups and experts in the ecosystem. So that's something I'm very proud of having participated in. But there's not like a list of things like go do this as an RD. It really is it's a place where we go and we insert ourselves and suddenly we get asked to do things based on level of insertion.
Yeah, I think I see a different mix of careers within the RDs in comparison to the MVPs. A lot of business owners. So something that I noticed when I was at the regional director dinner last year around MVP summit time, I sat with a table of global business owners, which was really interesting. Just hearing all the stories about them running their different businesses. And so I think, it's an interesting personality that you find that's maybe slightly different from an MVP.
Yeah.
Agreed. Anything else to add, Joel? Are you okay?
Yeah, I was just gonna say, if you were to look at it from a benefit perspective, when we have MVP Summit, the RD is going to go to MVP Summit, plus they have their special day. So even though Christian wasn't saying it was a level up, I kind of do see it as a level up.
It's being kind of treated that way too, but
we get all the benefits they do. So from like a what do you call it? Like, anyway, concentric circles. Like, we've got the circle of the MVPs. There's a little exclusive group, a smaller group of these RDs. And I would say it ends up being CX influence. It is kind of the influencer side, and some of the metrics of what is in our scorecard is much more of an essay. It's like when you're filling out if you get nominated for an RD, a lot more of it is tell us about your influence. And some of that influence may actually be industry, not necessarily even deeper in the Microsoft stuff. It can be in other spaces, whether it's in, especially as it relates to AI. I can imagine more and more. Your depth in spaces outside of Microsoft that brings that influence into the Microsoft ecosystem that people are so interested in.
Yeah. Yep. I would agree. Yeah, I think. Well, not even just people, but I think in Microsoft, especially as, Christian was saying that sometimes you guys help influence what's happening here internally too. So I think that's important. So thank you for just clarifying that a little bit, because I think that sometimes people are not 100% positive what's going on with that. So let's get to Ignite a little bit and understand a little bit more what's going on there. So, the first question I really have is, what stood out to you individually as the most impactful or important announcement from Microsoft, and why does that really matter to our, the customers that are here on this call? I mean, anything in particular that stood out that you thought was like, wow, that's huge? Anybody want to start?
I can jump in first. Just what was top of mind for me. One of the things that really holds a lot of our customers back from implementing agents is the governance factor. And so that's a huge conversation, right? And in seeing that they came out with Agent 365, alongside of that, the agent dashboard, and that's just, that announcement is all around governance, being able to know how many agents are deployed in your environment, what platform are they on, right? Is it Studio, is it Foundry, et cetera? Being able to have that roll up of how many agents are there, who has access, how do we control this situation, and then to have the integration into the other security platforms. I think that's huge. I think that's going to move everything faster, because that's been a huge holdup. It's just like, we don't know how to get our arms around this thing. And we've been trying to approach it from a, it's similar to your Power Platform in terms of, how you approach it from a COE perspective. But this, hands down, I think this will allow a lot of customers to just take a deep breath and go, okay, we've got our arms around this. Let's go build stuff.
Yeah, and I'll just add on top of that, if you were to say what the number one thing was, I would actually start there with Agent 365. But let me just add on that last year, the keyword was Copilot. Everything was Copilot. This year, everything is agent. And so we're moving from everything being a Copilot to everything being an agent. And please spend some time wrapping your head around what that actually means. Because essentially this agentic future we're going into is much more of it's not about coding a bunch of stuff. It is really about, especially from an IT perspective, it's about, there's a lot of automation that's going to be going on. There's a lot of, it seems like an agent might be a feature, an agent might be an API, an agent might be a new application, an agent might be a re-envisioning of an application. So the idea of what is an agent, don't even take a simple explanation of what an agent is, because essentially everything's an agent now. And just because it's called an agent doesn't necessarily mean it's autonomous either.
Correct. Yep.
So the sooner we can kind of understand everything Microsoft's going to be throwing at us is going to have the word agent in it. From Word agent to the translator agent to the SharePoint list agent,
yep,
to the page agent. Anyway, even the person, you're on a meeting and there's going to be an agent that's there that's keeping track of time. There may be an agent that's actually doing coding. And so our work has fundamentally changed. And I think that kind of the wake-up call here is, if you're worried about losing your job, it's because you didn't understand what agents are, because there's a lot of work, a ton of work that's coming up. And so the sooner we can actually learn how to, and I like how that previous session he talked about the old SharePoint governance days coming back with agents.
Yep.
I want to bring a term back. Agents is herding cats. Like, the cats are back.
Yeah.
And they're all over the place. And our ability to get our arms around it is the cool new thing. Is we're going to call it governance again. And governance sounds so boring, but it is. Yeah. That's our new job, and it is the Wild West. And so the Wild West is back. What are we going to do to herd these cats and tame them? Yeah.
Agreed.
Can I just say that? So I had a governance session at ESPC last week, and which is great. It was a packed room, which is always like, hey, people are finally understand. Everybody has questions that are out there. I do like to point from a historical standpoint that my first presentation in the Microsoft ecosystem was back in 2006, was in internal tech ready, was a governance session. And back when I worked with Joel and Bill Bear and Mike Watson and that team, and like nobody was talking about governance and going in and talking about governance and business continuity and things like backup. People are like, what is this stuff? Yeah, so it's great to see it come completely around. So I agree that I think that's number one. The other half of this, though, I will say that is, and I don't think it's new messaging per se, but the SharePoint, OneDrive, Teams being repositioned as more of that, like the foundational data layer for AI. It was funny. We did this last week. We did kind of an early birthday party for SharePoint for its 25th, and there was Heather Cook and I were leading a panel that had Adam Harmitz and a bunch of other folks on the stage, and talking about kind of standout moments from that, and what's like one word when you think about SharePoint, what's one word? And the word that popped in my mind, which is not the best word for it, some people kind of cringe at it, but I said infrastructure. And it's not that I'm not saying that as a negative thing. It's like, it's the pipes below all of the things that we're doing. And so the fact that Microsoft is doubling down on this idea that modern AI experiences are only as good as the content that they can securely retrieve underneath. It's a governance discussion. It's a SharePoint. It's an information architecture. It's kind of all of those things, which I know this crew, we've been talking about for many years. It's a lot of the same.
Yeah, it's not changed, right? It's always kind of been there, but I kind of feel like there's been points in the history of some of the features that are coming out from the Microsoft side of things. I think we had the same conversation when Delve came out, and the executives were just sitting there, why can't I see X, Y, and Z when I shouldn't be able to see that? And we've had these kind of conversations before, but I think it's kind of different now because it is really exposing that information. And yes, Pete, rest in peace, Delve. That we're really exposed now, and this is driving the customers finally, having that decision to make those changes on a governance level to be actually deploy this correctly, right? Or adjust it as necessary. So I agree 100% on all of that. So
isn't Work IQ the rebirth of Delve and?
I kind of feel
don't tell anyone; they'll freak out.
I think the same concerns people had with Delve are the same ones they probably should be having around AI.
Yeah. No, absolutely. Yeah.
But hopefully it actually manifests itself a lot better than Delve did.
Well, and we hopefully have better tools to manage that even more now, right? Especially with some of the things you guys are talking about as far as some of the tools that are coming out with Agent 365 for managing that, but even the back end things that are happening now with Knowledge Agent and how that would work for your admins versus having to do everything manual, right? So Christian, I know you're kind of leaping onto these. Was that the big thing that you got out of the announcements that were at Ignite this year, or was there anything else that kind of stuck in your head?
I mean, there's I would say, there's not any one big thing. I mean, I think what Stephanie kind of called it out too. Well, I guess both and Joel mentioned the same thing of like the difference between Copilot and now agents. So we've got, I think of it almost like Copilot when you talk about user experience and individual kind of activities. Last year, before going into Ignite, there was a lot of questions, and I wanted the same thing. It's like, we need to start seeing practical application of these things. It's nice to talk about this. Show us the business scenarios. Show us the data. Let's stop marketing to us. Start showing us what you've done, the data around that. And it was, I'm going to say that I felt a little let down, a lack of that kind of data. It was still very marketing heavy. This year, the shift over to agents, I think, has been more of that focus on here's what this actually looks like as it transforms businesses, as AI is applied in the workplace. Agents are the result. So I think that was the main thing that showed up. I'm not a big fan of the frontier firms branding and messaging around that. It's I chalk that up to Vibe Computing and Viva and kind of other stuff, the less successful brands, in my opinion. I'm not talking about the products underneath. I'm talking about the branding, the marketing of those things. But that whole movement, and I've written dozens of articles over the last year and a half around frontier firms, but it's a very real thing. It's a different way of approaching business transformation with AI. It's just fundamentally different than the business transformation we were talking about 5 years ago.
Yeah.
And so that was probably the biggest takeaway for me.
Okay.
I mean, second, the SharePoint as an infrastructure, third, governance. That's my 1, 2, 3.
All right.
I think it's very exciting though, right? Because I don't know about you all, but like having that modern work label over your head at work was kind of like, oh, it's legacy, it's outdated, right? Data and AI is the cool place to be. And I feel like it gave us the cool kid badge again. So now we're doing the cool stuff and the fun stuff, and it's put us front and center for business transformation. So to your point, I think it's an exciting time for those of us who've been doing this kind of work for a long time. Governance has been an unappreciated space for a very long time, now front and center. So I think it's very, very good for all of us.
I love that, and I just want to double down on that. I think that a year ago, our space could be described as productivity or content management, or maybe even stretch it into the data space, as it relates to some of that. I think that our jobs now are very much Gen AI just really squarely landed in our laps with Copilot, and you might have thought that the dev teams would have ended up taking that as a platform, but I think squarely what's happened with the IQ stacks, where you have the workplace IQ, and then you've got your fabric IQ, and I'm sure there's going to be Foundry and so on. There's these different IQs. Essentially, you may say that Graph itself has kind of been rebranded, but now we've got these kind of AI stacks, and as we kind of understand what those interfaces look like with agents or with the with teams as being kind of this interface to AI, that's, I think it kind of levels things up of like, hey, the way I manage my agents, I'm very likely to do that inside of Teams. Or M365 really is my surface, with the kind of UX changes to M365 itself, where it's like you're going in there and Copilot is what greets you. I think the more that we kind of recognize and see that, our jobs definitely have fundamentally changed, where it's really up to us now to kind of understand the governance, both from the data perspective, but these kind of middle tiers, and understand who's going to be reviewing and approving agents, and the policies and procedures and controls, and think about it from an identity perspective of it's not just managing humans. And yeah, sure, from an identity team perspective, they used to have service accounts or has been traditionally service accounts as well as humans. Now the identity space in a significant way is where our agents are going to need to be managed and controlled, and the transparency of what those things are doing and what's okay, what's not okay. Upgrades and conditional access policies, I think, was some significant things as it relates to kind of AI infrastructure, if you will.
I think we need to break down some of what you said, Joel, because in case they're not familiar, right? Work IQ, which is about giving context to people, processes. So more about like your role, your documents, your communication patterns. What does your team do, right? Like, and remembering that about, what does that engagement look like over time, and having the context for that. Fabric IQ, which is the ability to reason over more of your like business signals, right? So we're talking more of that operational data on the backside. So finance, supply chain, operations, stuff like that, right? And then Foundry IQ kind of takes both of those under its umbrella, SharePoint, Fabric IQ, but also includes like Azure storage, for example, right? So just giving you a pretty broad platform of data to give it a unified place to have all of that information. So it's leveling up the intelligence available in the different spaces that you're engaging with AI is kind of how I see it. Anything to
Yeah.
add there, guys?
Yeah, I'd just add, like, because I think one of the mistakes is that we're kind of joking. Again, I was joking that it's just a rebrand of the Graph and Delve. No, it's
better
different
than
than
that,
those
yeah.
things.
It is different.
Because
Yeah.
because it does sit on top of that foundation. It does something completely different. It's more of an orchestration layer that blends the enterprise data with large scale AI reasoning across that. And I mean, almost thinks of, I worked for a number of years in the manufacturing sector of the whole, like the service bus model of being able to come into this complex environment, be able to understand how I need to communicate with each of the different systems and read data. Back then it was, XML, the unified format kind of for sharing data across these systems. And then doing the orchestration, the order of operations of complex activities. So it's doing all of that orchestration across each of those different systems. And so when we start to talk about, I think it was Andrew Connell who, like 3 years ago at the MVP summit, and just kind of raised his hand and was just like, we kind of need an agent for managing all of the agents, and we're starting to build on to that concept now, where it's going to be more and more complex. So you won't have to know. We'll get to the point, and this is why it's also important to clean up, have governance over your agents, because you're going to have bad agents, in the system that are outdated, that don't work properly, that are inefficient, all those other things. But that you won't have to know what every agent does. The agents will go and find the agents that can do the task that you're asking for. So you can focus on the business output, what needs to be done, and it will handle the identifying the various components and then orchestrating that complexity. And then it becomes self-aware and takes over.
I love that.
Yeah, that's where that under, Christian.
Yeah, I think it's important to kind of understand some key differentiators. Like if you've been super plugged in on AI, we, as an example, we've been using ChatGPT Enterprise, and ChatGPT Enterprise has been approaching everything as a connector, where it's like, oh, let's have a bunch of connectors. Yeah, we can connect to Outlook. We can connect to SharePoint. We can connect to your OneDrive. We can connect to your Google Drive. We can connect to your Box or whatever.
Yeah.
And I think that what this workplace IQ gives you that you wouldn't be getting with that, oh, I'm just going to use a connector to connect to everything. This is how it levels up. It's relationships. You're really getting a key differentiator between what Microsoft's kind of giving in this case is there's a relationship between that email and everybody who's on that email. There's a relationship between that document and whoever has rights to that document and everybody who's modified that document. And that, just like it did in Graph, there was a lot of value to that. And now in Workplace IQ, the relationships between the people, the permissions and the rights and the roles, and not only that, it's all that stuff that we were talking about profiles just a minute ago. All the rich profile data adds layers and dimensions that are signals that essentially can be more predictive. And that's what's powerful about AI is it's the more it can understand about you and your role. Hey, you're an engineer in this company, and this is your manager, and these are your colleagues. It's going to be able to take all that. And the fact that your manager just asked you to do your status report, when you're working on your status report, it now understands all that and can take that context.
Agreed.
Power.
Which is highly a competitive and strategic thing to do, to advertise it this way, because now they've shoved all those competitors off to the side and said, oh, those are just connectors, in the way that they're pitching this, which I think is very smart on their part in the way that they've pitched this and been very purposeful about making that. They described it, I think, as the plumbing. You think of the connector as the plumbing, right? It makes it available. they've now leveled up and now allowed you to really reason over that and have that next level intelligence. I just thought that was really well done when you look at what they're doing from a competitive standpoint by talking about this.
Well, Microsoft has always been, I mean, one thing, like you could go in there and complain about competitive collaborative solutions and where Microsoft, the individual products compare to each of those and feature sets. Microsoft has almost always led on the business side of that and how the pieces come together and that story. And where a lot of those other players, they aren't thinking that way. They're going after their individual players. I mean, versus a complete ecosystem for the business that has it integrated. So it's again Microsoft looking at focusing on, maybe it's not as fast, but it integrates with everything that you're doing in Microsoft 365. I mean, right there, they have a massive advantage. Pull inference from that data, make it as seamless as possible. It's why I think everybody talks about when they share kind of favorite prompts. I mean, even Satya, when he was asked like what you're doing, had a variation of the, summarize the last week of meetings, of notes, of emails, of chats, all these things, and let me know, what I've missed. What do I need to be focusing on this week? Something simple like that. The other players can't do that.
Yeah. Unless they have all those connectors, but they don't have that thing that bridges all the gaps with that work IQ piece. So agreed.
Right.
So let me add throw a new thing into this that we haven't talked about yet, which is probably close to number one, is security. Security Copilot being much more pervasive and included in E5. That's a big deal. Integration with Defender and Purview, pulling in all this AI agent and enterprise-grade protections, also a huge deal, and adding a lot of that compliance. And I think that when we talk about key differentiators, one of the things that Microsoft brings to the table that a lot of these new AI players don't have and aren't going to know to bring to the table is that governance and is that enterprise-grade protection. As we've been working on information protection and rollouts, we have to kind of say, well, how can we do this with ChatGPT if it doesn't understand information protection, but Copilot does? So having those layers and that enterprise grade understanding of what protection really needs to be, not just on or off, but actually layers and the hierarchy of sensitive data and what it should be reasoning over and what it shouldn't be, and understanding what can be printed and what can't, taking all those information rights and protection and adding all those layers into what AI can and can't do is super powerful. And I'm not seeing it anywhere else.
Yeah, agreed. Great point. And I think that's the biggest thing. I think this is really pushing the security side of things, especially the compliance side of things, making sure that everything it's not just about the old stale data. It's about, do you have the right to actually see that and be able to do something with it, which has been age-old conversation for a while, but I think it's now even exposing it even more. And now that's part of the model, or it shouldn't be a part of that model, right? So making sure it's accounted for in that scenario. So Jason actually threw a great question talking about competitors and Copilot. It's interesting because Microsoft is working with competitors, but then they have competitors, right? Then partners versus competitors, right? So Jason's asking, yeah, exactly. Jason said, do you think Microsoft platforms are the best way to pull AI together, giving access to top models and connectors, right? So that bringing in other partners to be able to bring in those top models and connectors. With Copilot tying in GPT, Claude, Gemini, and others, it's really an orchestration layer. Is that what you guys are seeing? Ultimately, is Copilot is doing that, right?
What's great about Copilot from an MCP perspective is that even those other agents or other apps that you've built, you can essentially use MCP to connect to Copilot. So, and that's a lot of, as well, some of the announcements that were delivered here is just how much Microsoft is leaning in on MCP, where you can essentially have MCP servers for everything.
Agreed.
Well, I mean, I would just say that like Microsoft knows the M365 data better than anybody else, and will have the most comprehensive, integration of those different pieces. But I think that this, the which, orchestrating between the different models and all of that, it just becomes, I don't know, background theater. I mean, I don't care so much about that. I mean, everybody's going to be able to link to whatever model that they want in the future, across different apps, and I think that's going to be interchangeable. It's everything else that's happening on top of that. It's the worker IQ. It's the engine. It's the integration. It's all of that, and then you apply it across the model. So I mean, I don't know what marketing you need to do around it, but just the fact that you're, internally to sell people on that, but just explain to them, it's like, well, Copilot is Microsoft, therefore it understands Microsoft 365. And that is our primary business systems, what we continue to operate on, and all the underlying systems, and SharePoint is the infrastructure there. And then, I mean, even Microsoft, they partner and are heavily invested in OpenAI. They're playing with Claude. They're playing with other models. They're building their own. So there's going to be other models out there, but we're going to move away very quickly from going in and selecting in ChatGPT, for example, switching out the model. We don't care. Based on what you're asking, it will switch itself automatically. It will stop doing that.
Exactly.
Yeah, so the tagline from a marketing perspective is Copilot is the UI for AI, right? And we want to pull everything to the center. And what we continually find with customers, they go dabble with other products, and then they find that Microsoft has worked in whatever functionality they were trying to get. Microsoft's worked it in within due time, and then they're deprecating a system and coming back to Microsoft. We see it over and over and over. So I think as we continue to see these improvements, and like you said, there's so much emphasis on M365 being your primary business system. It just makes sense. It's built into the flow of what you're doing. It's in Teams, it's in Word, it's in PowerPoint, it's in Outlook, right? Like, why would you go anywhere else to go do something when you can build it right in, call the agent you need? Now those agents, I even saw in one of the announcements in Teams, you can call third-party tools from that agent now too. So like you're calling into Jira to get stuff done around something project management related, right? Like there's no need to leave the context of the tool you're already using to go do something else, or to use another system, or to utilize that other model. It's all if it's not already built in, it's coming. I think it's an easy button answer, especially now that we have all the right management tools in place to make that happen.
Yeah.
I like that even positioning of easy button, because I do think that the Microsoft side is so much more pluggable, so much more built in and enterprise grade from the start. You could say this past year, I've been a little bit frustrated with using Copilot and trying to get answers versus, say, a ChatGPT pointing at the same data. But that being said, when 5 hit, things really started to really improve. And as Microsoft's now adding memory, those things we're also going to start to see improve. So I think Microsoft's been a little bit staggered in their approach, because essentially they were leveraging other people's models. It wasn't Microsoft's models. So this past year or two has been a little bit frustrating from that perspective of why do I have to keep waiting for those features to come out? But I think a lot of that waiting now is over, because it's become so much more pluggable, and you're not waiting and having to use the older model just because they're because of somebody's agreement, or waiting for the safety and ethics to get added that really didn't end up adding any real safety or ethics. So I think that there's a little bit of, if you wanted to build your own stack, you absolutely could, and it's going to take you a lot longer. And some of those things are probably going to be purpose built inside the organization. And fine, you may end up building something on Anthropic directly, or in Brick, or with AWS, or with Gemini somewhere. but your ability to use Agent 365 to be aware of what's happening and to govern it and to essentially start to really understand the ecosystem, what's happening in the enterprise, we're going to continue to live in a world where it's not just a single Microsoft stack. It's going to be fairly diverse in this AI space. And I think our ability to kind of recognize that, it's smart for us to kind of acknowledge that. But for those companies who can kind of go all in, if all your emails in SharePoint is in Exchange Online, your data's in SharePoint and OneDrive, it's a total no-brainer. It's when you have kind of a more diverse ecosystem that you're going to have to figure out some of those MCP servers and understand, well, what are you building directly for the business? Is it in Foundry? You know, are you working in Dynamics? And anyway, trying to understand how that ecosystem works inside your organization is going to be key.
Yeah, agreed. Yeah, and I think that's one of the things I want to kind of ask you about a little bit is that, you know, I don't know if you guys feel this, but I kind of start really feeling that there's a lot more opportunities for end users to build what they need as opposed to having to rely on IT to do all that stuff. But yet, to your point, Joel, that MCP piece, that's something that IT has to get involved with, but they also, from a governance, have to deal with that. Okay, so what's the balance? So we got all these people making these agents here, and then you have all these other pieces. How is that going to flow, right? So are you guys starting to see more of that as you're interacting with your customers a little bit?
We're definitely seeing overlaps. You know, there'll be people building things that maybe already exist, or people, you know, in parallel building the same thing. And you have to kind of look at the big vision, the long term, and work your way back. If we were to look at like, what's the vision? What's the frontier firm look like? There's an agent store. And, you know, instead of interviewing a new coworker, right, you're just going to the store, picking an agent, getting them to go do the thing, right? I think that's where we want to head, that there's one version of the truth for, you know, whatever X activity happens to be that you need an agent for. And the reality today is that we kind of have to set ourselves up to experiment and maybe fail, or, you know, promote the things that are winning. And in that flow, you need an intake process for, if people are going to go build things, how do they get support? How do they escalate their need? How do you make sure Sue in accounting didn't just create a tier 1 application accidentally and not have any support for that, right? Those are the things that are going to start happening, and we're going to have to help them sort it, right? You know, where does this belong? Is it something small? Is it something that's going to impact a lot of people? Maybe that needs more support from IT, right? And what does that process look like? And we're recommending a center of excellence for that, right? Yeah. You've got a group of people, or, you know, coming together to be makers, but that there's a support system, there's a help desk system that sorts out, this is tier 1, this is tier 2, this is something someone created on the side, right? And that we support all of those needs differently. And then we have an intake process for, how do we take in if someone says, I've gotten it 80% of the way, I could really use this other 20%. What's that process look like? So there's a lot of conversations happening around each of those steps and those processes that IT needs to be ready for. No, there is not a help desk on the planet ready for, you know, 2,000 makers to come hit them with questions. So we have to build new systems to be able to support, how do we take with that influx of need and training and really help them become makers, because that's going to take a little while for us to adjust the way that we support our systems, I think.
Yeah, I was going to say as well, like, when you start talking about the empowerment of makers, there's some things that we need to plan for as it relates to Copilot Studio, and even as far as going to even Foundry. Like, I think for the most part, it's how do we prepare our users for when App Builder arrives? What will the governance look like for that? And that graduating step to something like Copilot Studio, and understanding that there's even multiple tiers to Copilot Studio, because really it's Copilot Studio Lite, right? Like, how do we make sure we're positioning Copilot Studio Lite for our users, and kind of recognize what are the connectors we want to be able to support? What's our MCP story? What is
Yep.
that enterprise? I want an app, and I want everybody in the company to consume it. There's a number of things to figure out, guardrails wise, in terms of how people get these things. And a lot of it is, if you have one hat and you're trying to support all this, you're probably not starting with, well, I'm going to be giving out Foundry services and supporting Foundry. You're going to be thinking about Copilot Studio Lite, and you're going to be thinking about out of the box connectors, and even leveraging some of the governance inside of what you've probably already built for Power Platform. And if you haven't, it's a good opportunity to start thinking about how your makers work in a sandbox, and what happens when they're ready to publish, and your ability to review and or decide what's okay to publish, and try and understand what that ecosystem should look like. And it really is shifting that mindset from, it's been AI assistants, to now we're talking about AI agents as digital workers, and thinking about governance from that kind of tiered perspective of, they're not just helper bots, they're actually going to be doing infrastructure work.
And I like what you said. There's makers and there's power users, right? Because you dropped a lot of stuff in there that we didn't necessarily explain what it is, but like the app builder, which is kind of like a Power Platform Lite, is how I've heard it described, right? The ability to go make an application with natural language. You've got Copilot Studio Lite, which is like your Teams agent builder. And those are like maker tools. And then we have a category for like power users, which could get in and do Power Platform and workflows, maybe some Copilot Studio full agents published from there, right? And then you have IT, which could get anywhere from, low code Copilot Studio into Foundry into whatever else, right? And pro code solutions, and accommodating all of those tiers is definitely an interesting challenge.
Yeah. Well, and I know Christian has something to add into it, but don't even forget about the first party agents that are coming out too. And where did that fit into that strategy? Because do you really want to make something that may be already first party and it does everything that you need already? It doesn't make sense to go down that route. So, keeping that in mind as well as you're looking at that strategy overall. So, Christian.
I was just going to add, because I agree with all of that. I just reminds me of a conversation I've had many, many times. I know all of you have had similar conversations. I just had this again this last week with sitting down with a woman who attended my governance session. We were talking about, how's this actually practically applied? What does this look like in real life? Because the danger is that we're all technologists, those that are the experts in the system that are out talking about this. It's easy to jump on, talk about the technology, and from that perspective, and throw these big terms out there. It's like, well, what does that actually mean? How's that translate? What do I actually do next week to start this process going? And so I tried to simplify it down, and I said, well, you think about what you as an individual, and think about like your own capacity, and this is part of like an adoption strategy. So you go and you look, and you start by giving employees like the simple Copilot capabilities, lightweight agents that are starting to take work off their plate. So start there. Summarizing meetings, drafting documents, creating content, preparing reports, like all those kinds of the common things. Get those things organized, because I know that people that are tackling Copilot like haven't even done that for themselves, actually gone through and that process. But it's an important phase in transformation, is reclaiming that time, understanding how it actually impacts your life individually, learning more about how the technology works. You can't go build something more complex if you don't understand the fundamentals. But then it's this idea, and this kind of fits into the, and I'm sure I'm chopping this all up, so Stephanie, you can yell at me if I'm missing something, but around frontier firms. But then you start thinking it like organizationally. You start thinking about the different teams. What are the specific outcomes of the teams? And they're supported by these specialized agents. There's the out-of-the-box agents. I'm doing training tomorrow where I'm talking about, I'm walking through and explaining, the out of the box agents, what they can do as they're building this into their planning. So if you think of like a new team or a product team that you've got, the two humans, you might have then the research agent. Here's what the research agent does. A content agent, maybe it's a SharePoint agent that's built around the specific content. A scheduling agent, you're using the project manager agent for that. A reporting agent. So the humans are guiding the work, the agents are executing on the work. You're better understanding what can I actually let go, give to the agent to go and do. So again, you're building on top of that. The third step is where we usually jump to, where we're talking about the future, is the scaling across the organization. This is where the real shift does happen, but you can't miss the first two steps to get there. Otherwise, people aren't going to understand how it works, and it will then fall apart. It'll become more difficult to manage. It'll get more chaotic. And so this is where you start to go through and doing workforce analytics. You're starting to look at what are people actually doing? Where can we, what are the gaps in skills? What can we actually go and automate? Project resourcing. I mean, I was working on an effort, pattern matching 20 years ago, trying to look at complex project management data. We didn't know what to call it a social graph. That's what it was, to try and understand the relationships between all the artifacts in the system so that we could speed up the delivery mechanisms. We could reuse content and code and kind of all those pieces. We finally have the technology in place where we can go and do those things, but people need to understand the fundamentals just to get there. And then the last step, and then I'll shut up for a while, but is the cultural aspects of this change. We can't forget that aspect of it. I mean, there's a huge mindset shift that needs to happen inside of organizations and moves this direction, because people are scared of this idea that it's going to take away jobs. I'm very much on the optimistic side of things. I think that AI is not going to take your job. Someone who knows how to leverage AI will take your job. So you have to understand how it works, how it fits. And if you're doing those first two steps, you're less likely to lose your job to that person that knows AI, because you've already figured out, here's where it can benefit me today and tomorrow. Anyway,
yeah,
I'm talking.
Well said.
So kind of a counter to what Christian is saying. I agree with everything you're saying, but I also want to kind of present a counterpoint that an executive comes in your office and says, we want to be an AI firm, or we want to, even setting out the vision that in 2028, we want to be able to be running autonomous agents as employees. What are the things you need to do to be able to support that vision of your CXO saying, hey, in the future, we're going to have a bunch of agents as employees. So if we kind of acknowledge that there's an agentic future for this organization, and your CXOs in your office and saying, okay, 2028, this is what it looks like. Now build the work back schedule for how you're going to get there. And that work back schedule of, well, what is the identity team now going to do? What do you got to do from a perspective of how you support Copilot Studio and how you support Foundry, or how you support and set up your services in such a way that you can scale? And if you need to hire the right people, your ability to paint the picture of, hey, we need somebody who's going to be managing agents. We don't have that yet. Guess what? You expanding your team probably isn't a bad thing. Your world has just changed, and the sooner you can articulate that, if your leadership wants that, you may be in a company that's like super afraid of it and isn't going this, and you're kind of dragging people along, but you actually may be in an organization where there is a CXO that sees this vision and wants to make it happen. And I think that's finding that person and building your work
Mhm.
back for, hey, how do we do a COE so that we can get the right people together to paint that vision and talk about what needs to be done so that we can accomplish what we need to, and build out that roadmap, because so much is different probably from the trajectory that you'd planned a year ago or 2 years ago.
Yeah.
The new world.
And I agree. I think, look, you've got to be moving big pieces today but you cannot abandon the first couple phases of that adoption strategy. Otherwise, you're going to leave your own people behind, and it's not going to go as smooth as you're hoping.
This is a marathon, and there are too many organizations wanting ROI in the first 5K. They're like, well, I rolled this out just M365 Copilot, and I'm not seeing any gains. It's like, you're in the productivity phase. People are just learning how to prompt. It's maybe helping you summarize your emails, right? But if you don't do that foundational phase, then the rest of it doesn't happen. And the ROI is really what's coming, right? We all know that.
Yeah.
It's gonna be really powerful, but we've got to build into it.
Agreed. Yeah, and I've seen a lot of customers that they want to jump to that phase right away, and it fails every single time because they didn't do the foundations, right? So that's just adoption change management, organizational change management principles right away.
Right.
Absolutely.
In fact, I think that's a great call out. Where it's like failure somewhere around 70%. Like, it's super, super high. So can we talk about some success criteria that is achievable in the short term? Because I think those who are trying to bake the ocean are absolutely going to fail. You very much have to figure out short-term success. If success is my users aren't using consumer AI tools, make that your number one, because guess what? The security alone is a great success to say that people aren't using their Perplexity for work stuff. They're not using their favorite ChatGPT personal account for their work stuff, and they're not uploading those sensitive files into their personal accounts. Like, that's got to be a significant milestone of, like, no, we want to get everybody empowered to be able to leverage this. And now Microsoft kind of opening the gates and saying, hey, we not only can you use the website, now you can actually use the tool in the interface and do your prompts in here, even if you don't have the license. So I think that definitely helps it make it much easier to say, we can bring everybody in the organization in here and even focus on getting the right people the full license, and address the gap of, hey, we don't want people just using consumer tools for their AI.
Great. Yeah.
There's an interesting question in the chat that kind of builds on that, right? And part of what the failure has been is, they treat it like just any other software tool. They do a training session, they drop it off, and nothing else happens. And you really need that change enablement program. But also, what we're seeing built into the tool makes it easier to use. So the question in the chat was about reaching a point where Copilot automatically chooses and creates the right agents. I'm pretty sure I saw a demo. It must have been Ignite related, where it popped up and suggested an agent based on the conversation that was happening in Copilot. So those things are already being built in. I don't know about automatically creating the agent, but it was definitely suggesting an agent to use based on what the person had put in there. So definitely heading that direction. And I love what I see, that the tool is continually easier and easier to use, which will help with that success.
Well, the fact that you could go in and look at a scenario like that and say, well, based on this, and you understand, and you've suggested these agents, or identified that there are no agents to this, what would be included in that agent? I always, when I do the AI foundations training, I love saying, it's like my favorite way of talking with Copilot is asking Copilot how to use Copilot. And so having it, if we don't already have it, because I didn't see that, Stephanie, but something similar to that, but that kind of aligns with, again, going back to AC's comment 3 years ago, of that's like the next step, is to say, all right, this piece is missing. Build for me the piece that fills this in. The outcome is I need a dashboard that monitors these things, that coordinates between these 3 different systems. Build me the right agent that does these things. This is what this is what I need at the end. Here's the output. Build it for me that gives me this output from these systems.
Yeah.
We're not far from that.
No, I would agree with that. I think you're right. Let's switch it up a little bit, but not yet switch it up too much, because I kind of feel like we've touched this, the idea on most of the conversation we talked about here, but I want to think about customer readiness and adoption in general. Right now, in your experiences, what is the number one biggest barrier that organizations have when they're trying to move into Copilot? What is that biggest thing that they have to get over to really get moving? Because Christian, I think you did a great job, and everybody else filled into that. What are the steps, right, that you should be thinking about doing it from crawl, walk, run type scenario? But what are the barriers that you guys are seeing to even just starting that whole crawl side of things?
I got one for you. I think it's often the dollar amount that makes it tough. And what I mean by that is, like, we're going to double the budget for this because we're going to have to spend $20 or $30 a user. And so I think that Microsoft kind of changed things up by saying, hey, everybody can use it. So, but let's put that aside for a second and say you're rolling out Copilot, or you're trying to decide you want to roll out Copilot. One of the things that I was really big on, kind of leadership was like, oh, do we buy it for everybody or do we don't buy it for everybody? I'm like, no. What we need to be able to do is buy a significant amount that'll build our kind of beachhead or bulkhead of being able to say, we have this many. And I was big on, let's make it self-service. Let's put a gate that people have to choose that they want it. That way, the people who want it, we're gonna let them have it. They can, but they have to go and self-select. So those who are afraid of it, they're not the first audience I care about.
Oh,
the first
sure,
audience I care about are those who are clamoring for it and need it and understand it. And then when I look at my adoption, I'm going to have 80, 90% adoption because those who selected it are using it. Now I know who I'm going to train, and I'm starting with a smaller audience as I roll and work with that audience of the people who are going to then tell the story to the rest of the organization about how much more productive they are. We can build our case studies off of that audience, and it's going to be so much more successful as a result of, we can tell what's working because we're looking at our adoption in our Viva statistics, and we can see, hey, look at who's, now we can start having some competition across the organization. Let's look at how this organization's using it versus that organization. And we can tell our stories about, you're using it for your meetings. And now we've rolled out the facilitator because we can see people, the number one way people are using it is meetings. And so we kind of just build on success, and success builds on success. And I think that's really how you successfully deploy Copilot, is by building success and then building on top of success, not trying to get it put in everybody's hands.
And that mind shift from it's the cost versus there's more to it than that, right? Go ahead, Stephanie.
I want to combine what Joel's saying with what Christian said in the chat and push those two things together, because I think it's very important for you to clean up your data, but I don't think you have to stop adoption or stop rollout. Clean up data and come back. Correct. I think you can run these things in parallel. And the way to do that is, I do agree to focus on people that are interested, but I would do so more strategically than a one-off people requesting. I might suggest, look at it, we call it teams-based guidance. Look at a team that might be more ready as a group to pick it up, because they're going to get more synergies and more productivity out of a group working together, like let's say an HR team or a marketing team, because they're all doing this together and they're building on each other's learnings and doing it as a group. And I think that when you're doing that, then you can say, okay, we're going to work with marketing first, and marketing's data, we're going to work with their cleanup first, right? Or, you do have to hit your high, maybe your execs and stuff first, but you have to do your high priority data. You work with the data that's cleaned up for the group that you're working with from a team perspective. You do those two things in parallel, you're going to move faster than if you're trying to address all things across the whole organization and with these one-off people. I think it's a little bit safer from a data perspective, and you're going to have better results. So I think both of those concepts are super relevant, but I think you can do so in combination. That way you don't have to fully wait on that entire cleanup to be done before you start running proof of concepts with smaller groups. Yes, walking and chewing gum is a good thing.
Yeah.
I think too many organizations fully pull back from experimenting, and I think it's slowing them down. I have to say though, I did see one new tool. Shout out to, I think it's Mondata. Is that how you say it? They're in Canada. I don't know if you guys have seen them. They have this tool called Weactus. It's like built right into Teams, and it will go out and have the end user do their own proofing, because that's the hardest part, is just getting them to go clean up their own data, because it's like this big manual process. So you can report all day long, but it's really hard to get them to go address it. Their tool, Weactus, like comes in, drops a note into your chat, gives you a direct link. That user goes out, hits the link, does their approvals on permissions, and then goes about their day. I love that methodology because you're just like dropped right in. They didn't pay me. They didn't sponsor me to say this, by the way. I don't. It's just a new tool I came across in the past couple of weeks. But I love that concept of, because that way you're doing it over time. Because the other problem we have is that we clean up data once and then we think we're done. And right, the second you're done with that cleanup, it starts over, because somebody comes in and they do something they shouldn't have done. So we have to figure out ways to do that continually as well. Yeah,
that continual attestation of that information. So, and Steffi, thank you for that. Throw it in chat, just because I know everybody's going to ask about it. So just, I know you're not endorsing them, but I know people are asked about it overall. So.
Well, sure. On the, around, I mean, you're right. I mean, this isn't ongoing. It's optimization. It's not. It's not a time-based. Hey, I'm done with this thing. It's ongoing. You have to move it into operations. And part of it. I mean, I would always say this around. Having worked for migration ISVs in that space, and I always, as a partner to ShareGate, and I always tell them, I said, look, it's not a migration. It's a change management activity. I mean, migration is like a moving from one place to another, and this is not a migration of the data, clean up the one time, hey, I'm done. No, this is an ongoing process. So you have to you have to consider it a change management activity. But now I was also thinking about all of this too, because we're throwing some ideas out there. I think for anybody, but go grab the transcript when we're done with all this, dump it into Copilot, come back with the plan, put it in whatever operation order that you want there. But my first thought of like what to go and do, it's kind of like the success criteria for moving to AI is I would put even more fundamental to all those things. I'm not disagreeing with anything Joel and Stephanie have said, but is if you don't know what you're trying to achieve, the clarity of outcomes should be number one. What you're trying to go and do, whether it's something complex or it's something as an individual. You don't start with AI features. You start with, here's what I'm trying to do. In operations, it's reducing the mean time to resolution of tickets, for example. Well, there's a lot of things that can do that to reduce the completion, the closing of tickets in a support organization. How do we cut weekly reporting time in half? How do we shorten the time to market for new proposals or RFPs that we're doing that? How do we, like those kinds of things? How do we improve the new employee onboarding process? So these are specific things. Then you go start designing, building out, the automations using AI from there.
Well, one successful thing I've seen in organizations is AI advocates. And so this idea of every department having an advocate, that it's they're essentially the evangelist inside of that department. But after you've figured out all of your personas, all of your use cases, and you've got hundreds of them now, I think that it ends up being that it's like, okay, who are you convincing? And AI is this new world of work, and there's so many things that you can do. I think it ends up being that even if, back in the day, Microsoft started with you can only have 25 licenses, when Copilot first started. So when we were back in those days, hey, we really, really need to understand what those 25 users, what their experience was, and where the rubber really met the ground. I think there's often people are going to this end stage of I'm going to cut down all these tickets and I'm going to transform this business process. And then they find out, oh, you know what, Word doesn't do that yet, or actually the Excel visualizer capability isn't quite there. And so I think some of this is like, what can it do? And more of the practicality of where we're at in maturity of these tools as it relates to them. And like those 25 users, they come back and say, you know what, I would give up my lunch every day for this tool because of XYZ. And just being able to capture those, you gave your survey and they told you why they would give up their lunch and what they're doing with it. Now you've got that data. Now you can go take it to whatever executive you need to be able to move to the next stage. Yep. I don't think that people need to be able to go super hardcore into this is what the enterprise is going to look like in 3 months because we've done this and this. I think the little hackathons, and actually, we use the hackathon, but actually it's what do they call it? Promptathon. It's like HR's promptathon was very revealing to me, because I think a lot of you go into HR and you say, okay, what do you want to do in your promptathon? Oh, we want to take this process and do this. And then you plug it into Copilot, and Copilot actually can't do it, or Word is not yet there. Or
it'll tell you it can do it, but yeah,
exactly.
It's like,
so
wait, you mean the Excel? You mean Copilot for Excel can't do everything that I saw in those demos at that show 2 years ago or a year ago?
Well, not yet. No, getting there.
Yeah.
It's kind of like a sales and an actuality thing.
Well, I hear a lot of complaints about Excel. It's a quick sidebar because they're transitioning, right? So they have the app skills. Then you got to use the drop down for app skills now to get the right stuff, and agent mode for all of that's coming. So I think where you do certain prompting is now transitioning a little bit, which I think is confusing people as this stuff gets rolled out. For those, I think it's all Frontier program right now, I think.
Stephanie, that's why I think, because that stuff is all, it comes out this month though, December, right?
Yeah, it's soon if it's not out already. Yeah.
It's still
Frontier. It goes back to your earlier point, Stephanie, that's why you have to experiment. Because Joel, you're right. I mean, half the stuff, it says, if you ask Copilot, hey, can you do this? Sure, I can do it. And then walks you through the steps of you doing it manually. Like, no. I wanted you to do it, not just tell me how to do it. Yes. So that's why the experimentation, because you're right. You've got to adjust your enthusiasm, temper your enthusiasm with the reality based on what you're able to go and do. But yeah, so you have to know that what the end state goal that you're trying to achieve, and then the reality of what the technology can do today and tomorrow.
There's some baby steps.
Right.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and somebody actually throws in there too, because I think you guys have been kind of hinting at it. It's not just those evangelists inside those departments. It's literally the stakeholders, right, at the upper level that also need to buy in. Like I think you were talking about, Joel, at the Sony Interactive area, you have executives coming to you say, "Hey, I want to see this, and I'll be a executive stakeholder in this." But not every time it's going to happen, right? So we do need to have those stakeholders in place to be able to help with these conversations across the board and help with strategy and however you're doing it. So. Good point. Thank you for that. Thinking about this a little bit, and I kind of talked about we've been talking about the whole maker versus power user versus IT side of things. This whole Copilot and this whole AI conversation, how do you feel things are, the conversations that you're having with IT and the business owners? Do you feel like there's a major shift moving from where we were doing a lot of conversations with IT for the longest time, and now we're really talking to the business owners to really get that buy-in and really move in? What are you guys seeing out there as you're having these conversations with organizations?
I think it's a lot of everything. I think the organizations that are trying to keep it under the IT umbrella are going a lot slower. I think those that immediately engage the business and find business value and business examples and business use cases and enable them quickly, that's where we're seeing a lot more momentum. Yeah.
Yep.
I definitely see less people enabling makers immediately. They will definitely, build things on behalf of the business first, bring makers in later once they're more comfortable. But yeah.
I think a key element is, we talk about top down versus bottom up.
Yep.
Where you see the most success is when you do have a leader in an organization that's fully on board, that has a vision and wants to go realize that vision. And whether they work with IT or they decide to use their own people to get there, say leveraging Copilot Studio, whatever it happens to be, even if it's just via kind of prompt chaining, the idea of we can do this, and our leader has said they want to see this kind of thing.
Yeah.
Like, it starts with something simple like, we spend all this time on status reports, and then we have to pull all those status reports together, and then those need to get summarized, and then finally we get them down to a single page for the CIO or whatever leader it happens to be. Isn't there a better way? Can we use the status app, or can we re-envision this as a form that takes advantage of that? And you start with your users of saying, hey, wouldn't it be great if you could push a button that would gather the status of your meetings and your accomplishments for the last week, and then you just massage what it says. Not saying it's going to be perfect, but that ability of kind of building out the app based on somebody's vision, and kind of just going back to those with leaders who see the vision and understands a specific business process they want to see optimized, things run much, much more smooth.
Yeah. All right. Thank you for that. I know we've been talking for quite a while, so thank you guys. I do have just a couple more questions, and then we'll be done with you for today. So I appreciate your time and energy in this conversation. Is there one big feature or one feature that was announced last at Ignite that you're like, oh, that's a game changer? What's that? The one thing that you really think is going to be big? And I know we're kind of talked about Agent 365, but outside of that realm, was there anything else that you're like, wow, this is one of the things I'm going to be talking to a lot of my customers about, or other people as I'm talking about Copilot?
There's a lot of little things that we haven't talked about, right? Like, I think something that's small that's actually really impactful is the agent ID. I don't know if that came out at Ignite or just before. There've been so many announcements rolling.
Agreed.
But the ability to kind of track and enable an agent with a specific ID, very much like a person, I think has enabled a lot of the reporting that's happening. So while it seems like maybe a very meh kind of announcement, I think from a foundational perspective, I think that that's really important and probably enables a lot of the functionality that we're starting to see. And then two, the other security one that I thought was significant, Security Copilot's now part of E5. And it's embedded in a lot of those security tools. So I think, just continuing to layer on the security as part of all of this is a critical foundational, maybe less flashy, but still very important functionality.
Yeah, I would agree on both of those.
I'm gonna tell you a story. I'm in an MBA program right now, and for my class, I've got a final on Friday, and I vibe coded a quiz that's gamified, that every 5 questions, if I get one wrong, I want it to re-ask that question in another way. And every time it asks me a question, if I get it right, I want it to give me a flashcard of like what that concept was so that I can read it and reinforce it. If I get it wrong, like I said, AI is going to re-ask that question as many times as it needs to until I really understand that concept. That whole app, I know Christian was poo-pooing vibe coding. I'm a big
Just the name vibe coding, not what it actually does. Right. Yeah.
I'm a big fan of vibe coding. I'm sure we will come up with a better name for it.
Yeah.
But
I hope so.
I'm sharing my little app that I built with everybody in the class. And, our ability to kind of drill for this multi-choice 35 questions on my marketing management class, it's really powerful. Everybody who sees it's like, wow, you're really good. I see this playing out in the enterprise in a significant way. Not saying app builder is going to land and V1 will be perfect, but I think the sooner we can kind of understand that app builder is a concept that's going to be so much bigger in the future, and it's really the vision of where we're going to be, like it's going to be transformative when it really, really lands. It basically think about it from a SharePoint perspective. Today you go and you create a SharePoint site and you get something that Microsoft envisioned. Well, it's going to be very close that we'll be able to say, I want a site and a list that does this, that has this form that does this, and that has a workflow that has your manager approve it. And you're going to be able to just describe it. And obviously not probably V1, but we will be there in shortly, and it's going to be powerful. Like the enterprise apps and the development of them, I love that it's not going to have to be some app builder team that builds SharePoint apps and SharePoint development. No. Any user that wants to can create whatever they need. And that's kind of the vision. And the building blocks are SharePoint. And I think that's super powerful. It's a SharePoint and Power Platform, and how that evolves and what governance looks like. Herding cats for sure. But I think it's super powerful, and I see a big vision in where App Builder goes. I don't think V1's going to nail it, but I think we're going to see cool stuff there.
Well, there's so much about that. I love that future as well. As a non-coder, it was like a year and a half ago, I had an idea for an Outlook extension, and I was using ChatGPT, but I was building a wireframe. And I would go in and as I was describing it, and I've been a product manager, I've worked in tech my entire career, so I know a little bit more than the average human on that process. But still, it was going and prompting me on the question, like little details of, are you building for the web, or does it need to be COM? Are you doing it for the app? Like, nope, I'm a new Outlook guy, just for the browser. But as I started going and do that and building the wireframe around it, like the code, it would ask me a bunch of questions on the back end. Where's the data? How's it being stored? Like what it asked all those logical pieces. Even if you said, I don't know, give me your suggestions for that with some of the answers. But at the end of it, I had a fairly complete wireframe for that product. I'm sure the code was garbage underneath it, but kind of like for those that are of a certain age and remember like UML and being able to have a notation in a way where you could use natural language. I mean, even UML is Unified Modeling Language for folks that don't know. To go and capture that was a method, a notation, so that non-technical and technical people could communicate around users and scenarios and develop apps together. You don't even need all that complexity to be able to go use real language. And every time you think of, oh yeah, there's this other feature I just thought of, and it would refactor all of that. I mean, that's incredibly powerful. You still, even if it never quite gets to the working application, if I can, 50%, 60% of the work done and hand it off to an engineer to go and then build that, you've saved a tremendous amount of time on that. So I agree. That's going to be huge. But the little things that I care about, again, go old school here, but I love a lot about the SharePoint knowledge agent, a lot what's happening around that space, but the automatic metadata extraction, like little features, little things like there. I mean, fundamentally change how organizations are managing and using their content. And this is one of those things where, again, it goes back to I got involved in SharePoint officially in 2005. I was forced into it, and I caught the bug, and a year later went to work for Microsoft. But it was, my earliest topics were around, librarian topics. In fact, I met two librarian experts in library sciences in Dublin last week, and we were talking about that. It's like, it's all coming back to what we've been talking about. I was like, yeah, for me, like those topics goes back to the mid 90s when I got into information systems. But reading the file, extracting the meaning, applying the metadata, being able to do that, grouping content, surfacing insights from that metadata. I mean, incredibly powerful, and will help improve that process. It won't perfect it. It'll improve the process of, do we automate it? Do we rely on individuals to do it? How do we make this better so that we have better tagging and classification of our data, which is pretty fundamental to cleaning up our content. So I think just the downstream effects of that capability is huge.
Great. Excellent. All right. Last question for today. Thank you, everybody, for being part of this. What's the one thing you want people walking away from our session today to, think about it as they're taking it back to their organization and really thinking about, what's happening here, all the changes from the Ignite announcements?
Remember everything we said. Everything.
Oh, okay. Good thing we have this recorded.
I do think it's important to, the Ignite sessions are free, right? So you can sign up and go out and watch them. Watch the keynote for sure. If you watch nothing else, watch the keynote, because it will take you step by step with demos through, I think, the vast majority of what we talked about today in terms of the big key announcements, just because I think it's important to kind of put eyes on this stuff and go out and learn about it at the next level. And I think it's amazing because coming up through the ranks, never got to go to the big conferences, and now the fact that all this stuff's available online for us to go out and watch it at leisure, I think is fantastic. And I super appreciate it because I didn't get to go this year either. And now I can go back and watch everything, and I'm not through everything I want to see yet either, but I definitely appreciate that it's out there.
Yeah, I think that one thing I said earlier, that we're moving from kind of the idea of AI assistants to AI agents. I think anybody who's listening, wrapping your head around agentic future.
Yeah.
Because the sooner, it's like there was a lot of kind of convincing everybody and kind of dragging everybody along that, hey, you're going to hear Copilot a lot. And now this world of everything's an agent. And those of you who are in IT, whether you're a developer and building agents, or whether you're an IT admin and you're trying to figure out how to govern or support or turn on agents and which ones to turn on and evaluate them, everybody really needs to be going heads down around understanding this agentic future and what it means to be part of the agentic future. Because the sooner you can and understand and wrapping your head around that that's what your new job is, you're going to be very, very employable. Our future is an agentic future. And this is very fundamental. So I think that's kind of my key takeaway, is just making sure you really understand that that's your new job. And so maybe you'll take it more seriously, that it's like, oh, but there's so many agents, everything's an agent. It's like, but guess what? Your new job is managing and governing agents. So just take that in mind as you dive deep and start watching a ton of videos.
Well, and using them, one quick note on that. There's a change review agent for IT admins. There's a device offboarding agent, right? Like, so even for those of you that are like infrastructure, hardcore infra, like, you know, you could be doing laptop refresh agents. Like there are very infrastructure focused things you can build and use as part of your daily. So it's just really important to embrace this, even if you're not someone who envisioned yourself as the creator. There's going to be tons of stuff out there for you to use.
Yeah, good point.
I'll say here's a strategy. Again, it's something that I'm trying to do. There's so much new stuff that's coming. There's so much that you can go and study. I'm not saying change those plans, but if you were to focus on one Microsoft agent per week, where you go and read about it, learn about it, watch a video, but do that one a week. You can build a plan around this for yourself. Go in there and play with it, experiment with it, but focus on that one until you like go through so you know how it works, you know how to leverage it. And so you're sick of playing with that thing. And then the next week, move on to the next one. That's something you can do. At the end of the year, you got 52 out of the box agents. Are there 52 today? I don't know how many there are. There will be. You'll still be playing catch up, at some point. But you will have such a better understanding of how they work and then what to go and build if you understand how those out of the box agents work.
Yeah, in fact, one of my tricks a few months ago, when there seemed like more and more and more agents, I created an Excel spreadsheet with different columns. And one of the columns was, is it on by default? Am I going to turn it on? Do I recommend it being on or off? And is it pay as you go? Is it licensed in my E3 or my E5? But basically wrapping my head around and then having a description of what is it, and then kind of putting together when do I want to deploy it? So kind of where is it on my roadmap for those that I'm saying, yes, we should deploy this? Because I love Christian's idea of one a week, but that's going to get you through. Yeah, if there's 52, that's going to take you a while. But your ability to kind of put together that spreadsheet and start to say, where should I be focusing my time? Being able to kind of get your head around what are the ones you should be that are just no-brainers, facilitator as an example, or the translator, or anyway,
you can prioritize your list for sure.
Prioritize it. Yeah,
absolutely. Great.
I love that idea too of tracking then what you know about it, fill that out, expand that spreadsheet.
Absolutely.
And again,
you're keep hearing more and more of them.
Then you'll be on this panel talking about your vast knowledge of all of the connectors and agents.
Absolutely.
You never know. You may be on an MVP trajectory. Who knows? All right. Thank you, all three of you, for instilling knowledge and your thoughts on Ignite. So we appreciate it. I know that there was a lot of great questions in here, so I appreciate it. So everybody, please give them a round of applause. And thank you again for being a part of the panel today, guys.